Okay, picking up where we left off in Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 5. I want to show you some stuff in the New Testament. Some more stuff in the New Testament from that. The verses read like this. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. One moment. The verses read like this. Verse 5 says, "They have dealt corruptly with him. They are no longer his children because they are blemished. They are a crooked and twisted generation." Okay, so let's go look at the New Testament again. And Matthew chapter 7, starting in verse 21, it says this. It says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. On that day many will say to me, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? Did we not cast out demons in your name? Not do many mighty works in your name?' And I will declare to them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness.'" Okay? Now the Greek word there for lawlessness is anomia, and it means, without law. And that's, something that in the Christian denominations that they all preach, that, the law of God is no longer in effect. And if they don't teach it that the whole law is done away with, they'll teach it that at least portions of it is. But we know from Matthew 5 that not one jot or tittle will be removed until heaven and earth has passed away and all is fulfilled. And last time I checked, heaven and earth are still here, so it all still applies. Okay, guys? So I wanted to show you, from not only from the Torah, that's just verse 5 out of the Torah. We found it in the prophets, we found it in the writings, and we found it also in the Gospels, and we also found it in the epistles of Paul, what he's talking about with this stuff. So you can't proclaim faith in the Messiah and do nothing that he teaches. That is a very dangerous road to go down. So please, you evangelists out there, don't start counting souls and just simply trying to get people, quote unquote, saved, because they're no more saved. They're actually in a worse position now than they were when they first came in your church, because now they're accepting into a covenant they know nothing about. And there are curses that come with that. So please guys, let's police ourselves up on that. All right, let's go to 32 verse 6. "Do you thus repay Yahweh, you foolish and senseless people? Is not he your Father who created you, who made you and established you? Remember the days of old, consider the years of many generations. Ask your father and he will show you, your elders and they will tell you. When the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, he fixed the borders of the peoples according to the numbers of the sons of Elohim." Okay, let's go up to verse 6. It says, "Do you thus repay Yahweh, you foolish and senseless people? Is he not your Father who created you, who made you and established you?" Okay, now we found out just a minute ago that this rock is not only speaking of the Old Testament Father, but he's also speaking of the Messiah. The rock is the Messiah. And it says right here that he is the creator. Now let's go find that in the New Testament. Okay? Excuse me, one moment. Give me 1 second. I apologize. All right, Colossians chapter 1, verse 16. Actually, let's back up a little bit. Let's go to... All right, let's go to verse 11. It says, "May you be strengthened with all power according to his glorious might, for all endurance and patience with joy, giving thanks to the Father who has qualified you to share in the inheritance of the saints in light. He has delivered us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of his beloved Son." All right, the key is here. The Son is the subject, in whom we have redemption and the forgiveness of sins. He is the image of the invisible Elohim, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him and for him. and he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Okay, so we see here that the Messiah has been here since the beginning of creation. He was the firstborn of all creation, and that includes the angels. And he was the creator. He is the firstborn of all creation, but he is the one that formed everything in the heavens and the earth and everything. He created the angels. He created man, all the animals, everything that was created. It was actually he that did the work. The Father spoke the word. The Messiah carries it out. That's the way it works. So that's very interesting that we find that right here in the Torah portion. It says, remember the days of old, consider the years of many generations, and ask your father, and he will show you, your elders, and they will tell you. Okay, many times throughout the scriptures, and especially during this time of year, we hear that same concept of return back to the ancient past, the old ways, the good doctrine. Good doctrine defined in the Proverbs, it says, for I give you good doctrine, forsake not my Torah, my law. So that's what we're trying to do with this movement, is going back to the root, going back to the ancient past that we know is of God, because we have his word to tell us what it is, and we don't have to worry about too many traditions of men. Remember the days of old. When the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he divided the mankind, he fixed the borders of the peoples according to the numbers of the sons of God. But Yahweh's portion is his people, Jacob his allotted heritage. He found him in a desert land, and in the howling waste of the wilderness. He encircled him and cared for him, and he kept him as the apple of his eye. Like an eagle that stirs up its nest, that flutters over its young, spreading out its wings and catching them, bearing them on its pinions, Yahweh alone guided him. No foreign god was with him. Okay. Now, this eagle's wings gives us a thread throughout all Scripture. And we're going to go through all those scriptures and see what it's talking about with the eagles, as bearing his eagle's wings. He puts us under his wings. It's like a lot of people call it being under the umbrella or under the headship of the Messiah. And that's exactly what he's talking about here. We're under his wings. It's like eagle's wings. So let's go in the scriptures and find out what all these eagle's wings are about here. Give me 1 second so we can start the process. Because there's a common thread that runs out through the scriptures with this saying of eagle's wings. Exodus 19, starting in verse 3, it says, while Moses went up to Yahweh, or to Elohim, Yahweh called out to him of the mountain, saying, thus you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the people of Israel, you yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. All right, so there's a common theme there with the Torah portion that we're reading this week. He's basically reminding us of this verse, of these happenings where he bore us on eagle's wings. And Isaiah 40 in the prophets, we find it. Starting in verse 30, it says, even you shall faint and be weary, and young men shall fall and be exhausted. But they who wait for Yahweh shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. So that's another common theme of an Exodus that we get. That they shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. That's exactly something that happened during the Exodus. All right, so we need to understand that. And then in the book of Revelations, there's one more that I wanted to point out to you, because it's a common theme of redemption, of restoration, and gathering his people like an eagle would gather up under their wings. In Revelations it says this, and when chapter 12 verse 13 says, when the dragon saw that he had been thrown down to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. But the woman was given the 2 wings of a great eagle, so that she might fly from the serpent into the wilderness, to the place where she is to be nourished for a times and a half of a time. That's 3.5 years. That's during the tribulation period. It doesn't say the woman is going to be snatched up and taken away during this time. What it says is that she will be given a place provided her to be nourished for 3.5 years by God on earth. That's what it means. The snatching up of the bride does not take place until the bride goes through her refinement process. Okay? We need to understand that there is no pre-tribulational rapture. Everyone on this planet that is alive will go through the tribulation, and I pray mercy that some of us, make it through. He's only gonna leave a remnant, so you better be prepared to die for your faith. There's no pre-trib rapture. It says immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be dark, and the moon shall not give his light, and he shall gather all his elect from the four corners of the heavens. That is the rapture, and the Messiah says it happens immediately after the tribulation. So I believe him more than I believe these pastors. All right, so there's a common thread that goes all throughout the scriptures about being born as under eagle's wings or riding up on eagle's wings, where Yahweh talks about delivering of his people. All right, starting out in verse 12, Yahweh alone guided him, no foreign god was with him. We cannot mix pagan customs with the worship of Yahweh. Only Yahweh, only his commandments do we follow. He made him ride on the high places of the land, and he ate the produce of the field, and he suckled him with honey out of the rock, and oil from the flinty rock, curds from the herd, and milk from the flock, with the fat of lambs, rams of Bashan, and goats, with every finest of the wheat, and you drank foaming wine made from the blood of the grape. But Jeshurun grew fat, and he kicked, and grew fat, stout, and slick, and he forsook God, who made him and scoffed at the rock of his salvation. Okay, guys, we know that there are people that scoff, and this brings up part of actually the New Testament portion of the reading this week that you're going to see during Yom Teruah. Let's go look this up in the New Testament. It says, it's a prophecy. Let's see here. Forgive me for a second. I guess I X'd out of it. I might have to open a new window. I'm sorry, guys. 1 second. Now let's listen and see what Paul has to say about these scoffers. Or maybe it isn't even Paul. Maybe it's Peter. No, it's Peter. All right, this is one of the most important and most misunderstood chapters in the entirety of Scripture. So I'm going to go through this whole thing. And what it's going to show you is that this is a very stout warning to something we're seeing very heavy in the world today. I wrote an article called The Rebellion, and I think you should go read it and show it to your Christian friends, because people who willfully sin, people who willfully rebel against God, do not get forgiveness. They actually get destruction and judgment. And what we're about to check out in 2 Peter chapter 3 is going to show us this very concept. And the one thing that remains the problem throughout Christianity is that they misunderstand the hard to understand writings of Paul. And now we're fixing to go through and we're going to read about these scoffers, and we're going to see exactly what they say, and we're also going to find out exactly why they say it. So with that said, let's stop here and we'll pick up on the